Hello and welcome to Notes from a Small, Cold, Dark, Miserable Island, the best podcast for expats with a very long name. I mean, the podcast has a very long name, not all the Americans in London. In fact, they often have very short names. For instance, I'm Mike.
I'm Matt. What a great setup, Mike. You had that planned.
It's almost as if I wrote it down. We're speaking remotely here today.
Experimental audio time.
Yeah, and we also have a special guest in our remote studio joining us online. So I have to explain the setup here. There I was, minding my own business, when a friend in the neighborhood dropped a Facebook post into the group chat. And of course, I took the bait. It was about a couple buying an old pub nearby, a pub that's been, I'm told, since I'm a newcomer in this area of West London, I'm told that it had an unsalubrious reputation for some years. But here's the kicker. This couple that's turning the pub around, they are American. And so when I read that bit of information, the post, I knew we had to invite them on. And here we have Erich von Gehren. Hello, Erich.
Hi, how are you, Mike?
All right.
Nice to meet you.
Thanks for joining us. You and your wife, Lisa, have bought the pub in Hanwell, the Duke of York. Is that right?
Yeah, for better or worse.
We want to go into that in some detail, but I want to, first of all, go into your backstory because you've been here in London for quite a while, right?
Well,
tell us how you got here.
So we've been here for, it'll be going on 5 years, right? 5 years, the end of this year. We are originally from Virginia, and in late 2015, decided it was time to get out of the country again. So we moved to Lebanon, to Beirut.
Okay.
All right.
The traditional corridor, the Virginia to Beirut corridor.
Yeah, right. Well, there's an awful long backstory and all of that as well. But we had lived in Beirut previously. As a matter of fact, our eldest son was born in Beirut. We got out of there the first time right after September 11th because all of our family in the U.S. thought we were crazy to live in the Middle East at that time. Probably the safest place to have been in hindsight. Went back to Virginia, and then I had the opportunity to go back there again in 2015. And so we did. And everything's, just idyllic, living on the Mediterranean, warm, wonderful people there. And then the economy started to melt down, and our flat got destroyed in the Beirut port explosion.
Wow.
So we thought that might be a good time to pick up stakes again.
But you were uninjured, I hope.
No, we weren't. Small cuts, some small cuts and things from flying glass, but no,
wow.
We were all right.
This was the big warehouse, or was it a ship? I forget what it was.
No, it was in the port. It was in the port. It was 2,750 metric tons of ammonium nitrate.
Yeah.
That blew up. So it was interesting.
So all the glass in your apartment blows out, and your apartment is completely destroyed.
Yeah, pretty much. We happened, as odd as it sounds, we happen to be very lucky that we were out on the balcony facing the port side of the building when it happened. Because that meant that all of the shattering glass went behind us into the flat.
This sounds extremely dramatic.
Yeah, it was pretty special at the moment, let me tell you.
So that leads you to move, but you choose to come here.
All right. Well, so it gets convoluted at that point as well.
Okay, go for it.
I had an opportunity lined up to come here to London to take over an expanding group of high-end Lebanese restaurants, which I happen to have lots of experience with. Um, but remember that this was in 2020 that all this happened. So it was right in the middle of COVID. And that made things kind of interesting because we weren't allowed to come to the UK at that point because of, I don't know if you remember or did traveling at that time, but these countries were on the red list for this country, and these countries were on the red list for this country.
I try to
So
blot that whole time out.
yeah, so long story short, I ended up going and doing a project in Dubai, and my wife and the two boys came first to Slough for 2 weeks so that they could have been outside of Lebanon to be able to get to a friend's place in the south of France. So they spent
Oh,
COVID in the south of France. I was in Dubai, and as soon as they opened up after the last lockdown, then we came to London.
that was sort of, you were sort of like, it was a country was on the red list. Like Lebanon would have been in the red list for one country, France, say,
Right,
and then
right. So it was on the red
I
list for France, but it wasn't for the UK.
right.
So it could come to the UK and then go to France.
You're dealing so, but you're dealing with all this as an expat, as and then eventually trying to move to the UK. And how was that? Like complicated? You had a business in mind. You had an invitation here.
Were you
Right.
Um,
sponsored
So
by the
yeah. So to be able to enter the country, to live in the country, needed to have a visa, and it was a skilled worker visa for this restaurant company because you have to have a sponsor, right? Um, it's a little bit more convoluted than just getting a tourist visa.
right?
So you have to be sponsored, and your occupation has to be in the sponsorable occupation list and so forth. So that all worked out fine. It was a very long, drawn out process, and
Many such cases.
yeah, actually necessitated me going back to the U.S. for the first time in many years because I had to apply for the visa originally from my home country.
So you had to reestablish residence back in the States.
No, not even reestablish residence. It was more a matter of going through all the biometric appointments and having the British consulate in New York issue the visa.
I see.
Right, so that all worked out fine. I worked with them for a couple of years here, and then changed to a different sponsor and worked in a completely different aspect of the business. Um, and but under the same occupation code. So I'm here as a chef. And it's
Yeah, this was
skilled
what I
worker.
was gonna. Yeah, so that's your training in your background is as a
Yeah,
chef. Yeah,
yeah,
yeah.
yeah. Well, chef, and front of the house. An awful lot of my experience has been in sort of the corporate side of things, not running an individual kitchen, but running a team of chefs in many kitchens. You mentioned Chicago earlier, and if you had been there a good while ago, you would have known some of my properties in Chicago. I had been the vice president of Levy Restaurants. So, among other things, we had Wrigley, Comiskey, um, the Bulls Stadium, Arlington Racetrack, the Michelin-starred Spiaggia. So I had a bunch of stuff going on
That's
in
high. That's
Chicago.
high and low. That's
Yeah,
everything.
yeah, yeah. And finally decided to leave Chicago when I got the 911 page, because this was before cell phones, really. I got the 911 page from the Lincoln Park Zoo saying that they were having an emergency with the popcorn. And I said, no, sorry, that's not what I
That's
signed up for.
I don't
below my
know
pay
if
grade.
if the Lincoln Park Zoo runs out of popcorn, that's difficult.
The
Yeah.
meerkats were going wild,
I would
stealing all.
classify that as an emergency. Uh,
Can I interject a question real quick,
Oh,
Eric?
yeah, please.
Just because this might be this is potential relevance to our countrymen living here in the UK. I was intrigued about having to change sponsors and the difficulty of that process, and how much additional paperwork and reapplication fees and time turnaround when if you're just living in your native country, you get a new employer and you fill out one tax form, but when for getting a new sponsor, how challenging was that?
Not terribly challenging from the employer's side. They needed to get a new certificate of sponsorship, a COS, for me specifically, and with that, I could apply for a new visa. But when I changed employers, the whole process took less than a week.
Oh wow.
Um, Now moving forward, so remember, I have to be on a sponsored visa here. Um, and if you're on a sponsored visa, you are allowed to work up to 20 hours a week in a different business, but within the same job classification. Um, and obviously, running a pub, 20 hours is not going to do it. I can't work a full-time job and then only 20 hours in the pub. So we ended up we established a limited company here and then went through an amazing amount. The documentation we had to file was close to 1,000 pages to be able to get a sponsor's license for the company to then be able to sponsor my visa.
right. So your company is sponsoring your visa.
Correct.
Wow, 1,000 pages. Okay. So this probably leads us quite neatly because um, tell us. You must have really wanted to buy this pub. Um, what? Why?
Yeah. So it's partially really, really want to buy the pub, and secondarily, or maybe primarily, to stay in the UK. We really like it here. We love the sort of village in the city that we live in. It's a great community, and just want to put down roots.
Um, there's I would guess that, okay, so just to sort of provide the context for people who might not know West London or this part of West London, Hanwell, you called it a village in the city. It definitely is that. It's got a bunch of independent businesses. It's sort of opened up, I think. You probably have seen this more starkly than I have. When the Elizabeth line had opened, and even before that, but really it sort of has connected it to central London and sort of um, if you went there, and I went there maybe 10, 15 years ago, it seemed a little bit out of the way, and it doesn't seem that way at all. Um, but it's also not a huge place, and you saw this pub that was up for sale. Probably opportunities like this don't come along that often. You What was your sort of idea? Like, did you sort of see it and say, "Oh, I've always wanted to do a pub," or is it, you were looking for a venue to do whatever you wanted to do with food?
No, it sort of came about in the completely opposite manner. So anywhere from south of the High Street, south of Uxbridge Road in Hanwell, if you're going to the Elizabeth Line station, you have to pass the Duke of York. It's
This
pretty
is
much
true.
the only way that you're going to get to the station. And so we walked past the place all the time, and finally realized that there was a sign, basically advertising that they were looking for someone to take over the property. And so we started thinking about it. It's like, maybe that's the opportunity for us.
And that's it must be a little bit more complicated than that though.
Oh, well, yeah, it is. That was that
1,000
was the
pages.
initial thought process. We started talking with Star Pubs, who owns the property. They're the freehold owner. We started talking with Star Pubs about this whole process a year ago, October, and the amount of paperwork and introductory material that you have to put together to sell them on you being the landlords of the place um, is fairly enormous. It's drafting complete business plans with staffing rotas and sample menus and so forth. Apparently, they'd been trying to find somebody to take on this property for about 6 years, and had plenty of people apply for it, and nobody sort of fit the criterion of what they wanted the pub to turn into.
So
Wow,
your
wow.
background with both management and, hands-on food experience sounds like it was ideal.
Yeah, and in an awful lot of the pubs, they deal with a big food supplier like Breaks or Booker's, and they buy everything in, lots of stuff dropped in the fryer, and call it good. And we're going a different direction than that. We all live on this island, right? And so it's important to us that we support the industries on this island. So we're only buying British produce and making everything in scratch in house. And I have an awful lot of experience with doing farm to table stuff and dealing directly with farmers and small local suppliers. And so that's really what we're going to do.
This totally fits the Hanwell vibe. Is I your Lebanese experiences, are they going to come into the menu at all?
No,
Is there a
not
good
at all, not
No?
at all,
Okay.
because the market basket, the native products that you have to deal with are entirely different.
So I'm assuming that you're not going to go for a particularly American menu either.
No, no,
This
no,
is British
no.
100%.
Yeah, British 100%, but sort of in an elevated fashion. We'll do bangers and mash, but there'll be venison sausages
Hmm.
and celery root mash. Um, I'll be doing things like pig cheeks braised in cider with Bramley apples.
English
Um,
cuisine, traditionally one of the most, derided cuisines up until, maybe just this generation. So yeah, I think bringing some elevation to it is going to be the name of the game.
yeah, but we have some brilliant products here, and for instance, if you were in the U.S., it'd be very easy to do a menu made from only U.S. products. But if you were from the East Coast, where we were, almost all of your produce gets shipped 3,000 miles across the country. And in this case, the man who makes my cheese down in Sussex, he can deliver it himself.
Yes, your cheese guy.
My cheese guy.
You've probably been to the tiny West Ealing Farmers Market.
Oh
Now,
yeah, we're actually going there after we finish with
are
this.
you? Okay, excellent. Yeah, there's some great people there who sort of remind me of that. There's the guy who sells the pork products, and he's like the farmer who drives in from like Lincolnshire.
Yeah,
Um, there used to be a cheese guy there years ago when this was probably 20 years ago when we lived here previously, but he's gone. Uh, but anyway, Anyway, just getting nostalgic. Um, the I don't want to get too into the weeds, but so you mentioned the pub company. Um, uh, this is like an unusual. It seems to me very particularly British setup where you have a pub company that I take it actually sort of owns the building, and you are something in between, sort of like a tenant and an owner,
Yeah,
right?
what is
Like,
a pub landlord? I've heard that
Yeah, yeah.
phrase.
how
I
does
always
that all work?
I just thought it meant
So
like the
the
manager.
so the terms that could be used to describe us are the landlord or the publican, right? And interestingly enough, the landlord is the person who runs the pub. It's not the person who owns the piece of soil that it sits on. In the US, you would say the landlord is the person that you are renting the property from.
Right.
But in our case, we are the landlords and we are renting the property from someone else.
Yeah, yeah. So it's a confusing. So you sort of you own the business, and it's like your money's at stake here. But so it's not an employment issue, but you don't actually own the building, the physical building.
Correct.
Yeah. Okay. I think that's another thing. We should probably go into that in some detail with somebody at some point down the line about the whole sort of freehold and leasehold thing, which is it was always described to me as British people can't imagine, particularly like in buildings that there's like flats. They can't imagine just somebody owning like a share of a building, or like a property in the air. Somebody has to be the ultimate owner of the land itself.
Well, in,
Um,
in a situation like that, if you have um, a building that has three flats in it, very frequently you'll have the the owners of those three different flats. Each of them owns a third of the land that sits underneath them as well.
Hey, can I ask, Eric, what you've had a varied background in your industry. Sounds like all types of different venues. And now, at this stage in your career, having done all this legwork and the ability to sort of call your own shot, what is it that you like about pubs as compared to restaurants or bars or clubs? What is it about the English pub that made you say, okay, this is where I want to spend my time?
You know, a restaurant in general, almost anywhere you go, it's a place that people go and they have a meal, and that's sort of it. A British pub is far more than a bar. It's far more than a restaurant. It is a focus of the community. It's a place where people get together. They run into people that they know. They run into people that they don't know. And so there's a huge social piece behind it. It's a big piece of the social fabric of the community, and that's really appealing to have that sort of footprint, um, because it makes it really sort of puts the definition of hospitality right into focus. You're opening up your place and just sort of inviting in friends, so to speak.
I'm guessing that it took a lot of work to get um, this place up to scratch. Tell us how that has all gone, and when you're opening.
All right, so we had our last design team meeting a little over a week ago, sorting out all the details. Come a week from Monday, the entire building will be wrapped in scaffolding, and it will be a 7 or 8 week process to completely refurbish the place, put in a brand new kitchen, get the cellar up to speed. Um, Importantly for us, getting the accommodation upstairs sorted out so that we can move in there. That's another brilliant thing. My commute is going to be about 23 seconds.
Downstairs.
Yeah, just downstairs, which is
There's going to be some great unshowered mornings of just like, oh no, I slept in, and now we had to open the place.
well, yeah, yeah. There's that end of it, but also being the proprietor of the business. I've owned restaurants before, and even when it's quote unquote your day off, you're never really off. But if you just live upstairs, if there's some little sniggly bit that needs to be taken care of, it's no great hassle. You can just
Yeah.
sort of knock it out.
If they run out of popcorn or whatever downstairs, you can...
Yeah.
This is so you're at the start, but so I won't sort of pin you down. It probably will be a movable
Late
feast.
spring, early summer shooting for
Yeah.
No. Actually, I was disappointed that we're not going to be able to be open for Easter weekend.
Mm.
But with the timing on things, we would just be able to open for Easter weekend, and that would be just inviting disaster to have, the Sunday roast on Easter Sunday being one of your first meal periods.
it.
Everybody wants this roast on Easter Sunday. Yeah.
Yeah. So we will probably we'll be opening the week after Easter.
Nice timing. Great. Well, and it's on Uxbridge Road. It's right near Hanwell Station. Mark it in your calendars right after Easter. I only have one more question, which is really, so you've been here for roughly 5 to 6 years now. And one of the reasons we started this podcast is because, we're here. We notice more Americans here. Obviously, you cited the situation in the United States for a reason for leaving well before then. Do you notice more Americans coming over here, sort of, being sort of put off by politics and society in the United States and seeking their fortunes elsewhere? Do you run into many of these people?
To be fair, not too many. I certainly have a few, and I have to say that most of the American expats that we have met here would prefer to live someplace other than the U.S. at this point, shall we say?
You may.
Yeah. So they tend to be a little bit more like-minded.
Yeah.
And
Sorry,
go ahead, Matt. Go ahead.
No, you go.
You see yourselves as staying here for a long time and in Hanwell for a long time, it sounds like.
Yeah. No, so our initial lease period is for 5 years, but there's no reason why we wouldn't just continue after that. At the end of this year, I'll be eligible for indefinite leave to remain.
Hey.
In theory.
Have you taken your life in Britain test?
Well, yeah, that's absolutely the least of my worries.
Oh yeah,
I'm more concerned. So we started the whole immigration dealio a year ago, January, working with the solicitors to put together the company and get the sponsor's license and so forth. And that all of that and getting our visas took the better part of a year. And part of that was because we would have all of the paperwork done. And then in April, the immigration white paper came out and changed the rules.
Right.
Mm.
And so we adjusted to all of that. And then the new immigration decrees came out in July and changed the rules again. So there was some scrambling there, and interestingly enough, I came on a sponsored visa as a chef. Well, in the July paper, chef was taken off of the sponsorable occupation list.
Oh
Wow.
my gosh.
Um, but I was grandfathered in because I had one already.
Okay.
But other people that I know, a chef that I worked with in the past, had been here as a chef and left back to the States and wanted to come back again, and she would not be eligible again.
This to me. So, um, my sort of other life is going to be bleeding in here because I often study right wing and far right movements, and the this seems to me to be sort of a product of this whole thing because one thing they tend to rail against is not chefs from America, right? Chefs from India, chefs from Pakistan.
Right.
For some reason, this is a big thing. I can't, I tried to get to the bottom of this the other day, actually, because for some obscure reasons, I was doing some writing about it. They don't, there's not, a huge amount, but like the number of chefs that come on visas has been completely exaggerated by some of these like right wing influencers online. And I'm sure that taking off that occupation had something to do with, that and the current Labor government. We don't like to get too political here, but that's just my take on it.
No, it has been getting more difficult, and to be fair, I think a lot of labor's reaction has been to the rising popularity of reform, which is seemingly just a carbon copy based off of what's happening in the U.S. right now. And they're like, oh, reform is becoming much more popular. We need to adjust our policies so that we can attract more of the people that are attracted to them.
Yeah, this is
Whole strategy that, yeah, kowtowing that it's a bit feckless. Can I do a hard pivot, Mike, and just ask one more thing about the world of pubs to Eric? I know you're going to be serving amazing, warming, hearty food that's going to soak up a lot of the, fantastic brews that you're going to have on tap. But you're still going to be dealing with drunks. Uh, this
I
is
was
this
wondering
is a
where you were going here.
the pub world. And there's a lot of I just find the British drunk different from the American drunk, and and there's even different adjectives. There's a spectrum: merry, pissed, Larry. I wondered if you had any sense of this. Like, okay, I'm coming into this world and I'm gonna have to deal. I mean, sometimes like British drunks are much more fun than American drunks, I find. But yeah, do you, off jump have any feelings about the world of intoxication that you're about to bring yourself into?
Interesting question. Um, so I think part of our position is that it's going to be a more premium pub. One of the things that we're trying to do is make it a friendlier place for families, for pensioners, um, who, to be fair, in the last incarnation of the Duke of York, were not at all comfortable.
Right.
Um, and keep in mind that just like in the U.S., it is illegal to serve somebody who is already drunk here. Um, the 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 enforcement of that seems to be much more relaxed than it is in some other places. But it's it's an issue of managing that.
Hmm. Identifying and then being able to communicate that, hey, buddy, I think you're good.
Yeah, basically. And there's actually an awful lot of training that you go through that sort of teaches you to deal with that situation. and how to bring it down a few notches.
I want to come and be a test subject for that.
You- You're welcome anytime we open.
You mean like you mean you're gonna get pissed and Larry and see how Eric deals with it?
Right.
Yeah, all right, let's do that. We'll see you after Easter. Excellent. Well, look, thanks very much. The location of the pub and the details and the name, in case you were listening and missed it, will be in the show notes. I don't know, Matt, if you have any recommendations for this week. I have one that I'll just briefly mention. Uh, my wife got us tickets to go see Josh Johnson, comedian. Um,
My
I
dude,
don't.
I am so jealous.
Are you really?
I love this guy, man. When his YouTube channel broke, like I don't know, maybe 2 years ago, and he was putting out his long, sort of rambling, but making sense of the chaos, uh, stand up, but not trying to do jokes. State of the world videos after he'd established himself as a Daily Show correspondent. Oh man, I got so into Josh Johnson, and I never communicated this to your lovely wife so that she could enjoy
Oh,
along too.
we need to swap calendars or something.
Yeah.
I'm so sorry I didn't mention
No,
it
no, no.
beforehand. Um, he was funny. And I didn't really know a whole lot about him. I listened to a little bit that he had on uh, Spotify or whatever, but she was really into him. I think from our time in the U.S. Um, he it was very transatlantic heavy because I guess he does a lot of very topical stuff, obviously, because he's this Daily Show guy. Uh, and he spent quite a long time discussing the differences between the New York City subway and the London tube and chiding the Brits in the audience for being down on their public transportation system
Yeah.
by by recounting eye-popping stories from uh, riding public transport in New York City
It's true. Yeah, anytime I just had
involving.
a coworker go to New York over New Year's and and came back with a whole new appreciation for the tube because, she was horrified by yeah, what New York has to offer.
About real quick, if we're talking
Yeah.
about cultural calendar,
Yes,
I
please.
need to bring it to your attention or remind you that the 9th of May is the 13th annual Hanwell Hootie.
Oh yeah, yeah. This is amazing, and yeah, and you're probably open for it.
We'll be open for that, and we're also one of the official venues for it. So we'll have 7 bands through the course of the day.
This is excellent. Matt, do you know the Hanwell Hootie?
I know Hootie and the Blowfish.
Okay, okay. No, this is a great story because I also feel that this is something that was you say 13 years, Eric.
Yeah, this will be the 13th year.
Okay, why don't you explain like what is the Hanwell Hootie?
So 13 years ago, a gentleman by the name of Jim Marshall passed away. And Jim Marshall and his son Terry had a music shop on Uxbridge Road, just down the street from the pub, um, where they sold some band equipment. They sold drums, and this was back 1962. Um, they heard that there was a lot of interest in better quality guitar amplifiers. So they started building them and created a company called Marshall. And I'm sure everybody has seen Marshall amps out there. It's a huge company
Talking about those
now,
Marshall stacks.
right? Well, they were originally built by hand out of a little storefront on Uxbridge Road in Hanwell. And so Hanwell became known as the home of loud. And Hendrix, the Rolling Stones, the Who, everybody came in to buy their equipment from this little shop in Hanwell.
I love these stories because it's like, and they didn't have the Elizabeth line either.
No,
Jimi Hendrix, like back in the day, it would have been a bit of a trek out from London to get out here from Carnaby
no,
Street.
it certainly would. But we have uh, Ealing in general has an amazing rock and roll musical history, and so to sort of honor the work that Jim Marshall had done, um, the Hanwell Hootie was started, and it was originally sort of I guess you'd call it a block party, but now this past year it attracted 35,000 people. It's the largest free music festival in London, and it's a good time had by all. It's so all these venues, all the music venues, and there are well over 100 bands involved in the whole thing over the course of the day. It's all free.
Yeah, it's all free. It's great. Like it's been some years. I'm so looking forward to it even now. Well, particularly now in the depths of winter. Um, but what I, and you get some good bands, you get some on the up bands, but like there's also just a bunch of kids in the area who start bands and play, and you get these, 16-year-olds just like rocking out, and obviously some of them cannot control their instruments. There's all sorts of genres and all sorts of music, and it's 100% free, and everybody is very jolly, not Larry at all. Um, I'm so glad that you mentioned it because it's definitely a gem.
Going on the calendar for sure.
Yeah, 9th of
Hanwellhoodie.co.
May in Sweden.
Mike, maybe let's double back in May, and we can have our Hanwell Hootie episode.
Absolutely, absolutely. Well, thanks very much, Eric.
Oh, it's been a pleasure. Thank you.
Nice to speak to you, and good luck. You have a lot of work ahead of you. It's going to take more than 20 hours a week.
Yeah, that's pretty much a given.
Yeah. Well, congratulations. Look forward to meeting in person.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, you're welcome. Welcome anytime after we open.
All right, thanks a lot.
All right. Cheers. Have a great day.
Well, that was interesting. Good to hear our countrymen trying to establish a business
Loving him.
in
Can't
London.
wait for that place to be open. I mean, let's set up our field trip. I'm gonna come out and stay with you, and then we're gonna go bother Eric and Lisa.
Definitely. Perhaps for the Hanwell Hootie.
And also, they survived the Beirut explosion. Like that's a bit of the like unexplored uh, terror of that episode.
We've totally buried the lead there, as is our wont. Remind people how they can email us with their dramatic stories about survival and rebirth.
Well, yeah, I mean now if you've listened to multiple episodes, you see that we're moving into the world of guests with their fascinating individual stories. So if you have someone that you'd like to introduce us to, who is an immigrant to England, to London from the States, or if you have a suggestion for a topic about life in this beautiful burg, then please send us an email to colddarkmiserablepod@gmail.com. All those words run together, spelled the normal way. colddarkmiserablepod@gmail.com is the way to reach us.
Please do. Please do. We would love to hear from you. I think that's it for this week.
Right, yeah. Mike, I wanted to just ask. I know this hasn't gone well previously,
Oh
but
no, what is it?
I just feel like we're lacking a musical signature, so like a theme song. And listening to Eric really inspired me.
Okay.
And also
You're going to try again.
listening to songs that my 6-year-old daughter likes inspired me. And I'm in my house recording this, not the studio today, so I have access to the piano. My daughter's taking piano lessons. I can't play piano, but I can do the intro or a version of it to the song that I've prepared for you as a
Okay.
presentation for a potential theme. Are you ready?
All right. Yeah. Yeah. Go for it.
All right. I know you think Europe is dumb, but I can't ignore the foggy visions of me in London. And the land for which I've got the travel bug is where blokes and birds don't think we're all a bunch of racist thugs. America's the greatest country, and yet I want to leave. I'm gonna emigrate, show you borders are fake. Bro, what have you done? You're a Miller Lite dude, or old fashions at the country club. I said, cheers, but fascism's not fun. Give me a global town that theoretically welcomes everyone. Down at the Yank Expat Pub, I'm gonna keep on drinking at the Yank Expat Pub. Out in Hanwell, which is west of West Norwood, drinking moderately at the Yank Expat Pub. Yank Expat Pub, strictly British produce at the Yank Expat Pub. Yank Expat Pub, solo.